Hi everyone, my name is Angela and today we are here with Aubrey Joachim. Aubrey is a global trainer, coach, and a mentor of senior managers in strategic finance transformation and management accounting. In 2009, Aubrey became the first non-UK global president of Chartered Institute of Management Accountants, or CIMA, in 90 years. And there was no doubt that he was named as the most traveled global president at CIMA. Prior to his current role as a global trainer, where he is exposed to over 19 countries, Aubrey commenced his career as an accountant at Unilever in Sri Lanka, then a finance manager at McDermott International in Dubai and London, followed by a finance manager at Sydney Water in Sydney. Aubrey is a provider of training courses to CIMA UK, CAANZ, CPA Australia, and many more professional bodies. He also presents to large teams in various government agencies and listed companies such as Barclays, Rolls-Royce, IBM, Shell, Ford, just to name a few. So, hi Aubrey, how are you?
Very well, Angela. Thank you for inviting me to be a part of your venture, your aspirations.
Thank you. Thank you for joining. I'm really excited to interview you today. So let's start with, could you please tell us a little bit about yourself?
Well, what is there for me to say with you having said everything about me? There's one little thing that I might amend to what you said. You referred to me exposed to 19 countries. It's actually 35.
Oh, wow.
And I have been to many more as well. But countries that I have dealt with in a professional capacity, yes, 35. And growing, I would say. Yeah. So, as you mentioned, I originally come from Sri Lanka. That's where I was born, but I am of Portuguese descent.
Oh.
So, as I tell everyone, when I was interviewed, when I was CIMA president, I said I'm a Sri Lankan of Portuguese descent who's lived and worked in 5 different countries. And now I'm a citizen of Australia. How more global can you become? We live in a global world. And as walking into the shoes of the president's role in a global organization, that was ideally the profile that the organization was looking for.
Right. So you're a very globalized person. Could you please give us a brief overview of what you do day to day?
Well, especially in these days of lockdown, one can do several things. What is a normal day? I mean, given that my professional work is about talking to people, well, I'm spending a part of my day talking to you.
Yeah.
I've had 2 meetings this morning with 2 of the professional bodies talking about my future programs and how I would deliver them virtually in the current climate. After I finish with you, I'll go out to my workshop and build something. I do a bit of carpentry. Keep my mind occupied. I might walk into the garden and trim some of my plants or grow a few veggies. The point I'm trying to make is you have to have a wide variety of things you do to keep your mind and yourself occupied. So that's what I am blessed with. That's what I can do.
So what do you like about your current role?
Well, everything about my current role. And I can take my current role in various aspects or perspectives, so to speak. Yes, I'm a professional. I have a professional management accounting background. But long gone are the days since I actually was involved in anything directly financial or accounting related. Today, people like us, professionals in whatever space you are, ascend and migrate to do other things that are adding value to organizations. So therefore, what I enjoy most as a trainer and a coach and a mentor is sharing my knowledge, the knowledge that I have gathered through significant amounts of travel, my work roles in multiple countries, I would add. And especially when I refer to those 35 countries, it gives me significant understanding of people and cultures from different parts of the world. Even when I was working in an organization like McDermott, which was an international company, and I worked with them in the Middle East, in Dubai, and then I transferred to Singapore, and then I transferred with them to the London office and worked in Scotland and things like that. They had in excess of 100,000 workers at that stage. And at any location, they could have a workforce coming from dozens of countries. And I would listen to a few sentences said by someone and say, you come from this country. And people used to be taken aback. How did he know that? I have a fine ear for that. And therefore, I begin to relate to people differently. And that's what I like about what I do. Yeah. And every day is a new experience. Even when I was in a corporate role, I used to always want to have a different experience every day. And that's what I tell young professionals today, especially accountants. Don't expect your work to be a boring timetable of this is what you do on this day of the week. You have to come to work not knowing what's going to hit you. And that is what keeps the adrenaline flowing in you. And I don't know about yourselves and you, but it's the adrenaline in me that keeps me motivated, that gets me going. So therefore, I can be doing anything and I can be pleased about it.
Could you tell us more about how your industry has changed?
Yeah, how the profession has changed. So once again, I'll take it in two ways, Angela. I'll look at my professional background, a finance professional, and I'll look at my other background, which is a trainer and mentor and all of that, which I have been over the last 20 years. Let's face it, in any profession, in anything you do, you start at the bottom. And you referred to me having started my career at Unilever in Sri Lanka. And let me tell you, Unilever anywhere in the world is of the same standard. And I started right at the bottom because that's where you get the best understanding of what you're going to do. That is what shaped my future career path. I always wanted to be an engineer. I was good at those things, which is why I'm still able to construct things, to make things, to create things, to imagine, etc. I didn't have the opportunity of pursuing a career in engineering, and therefore, quite by chance, I ended up in a finance career in Unilever. And I started right at the bottom, doing the basic stuff. You cannot go to the top unless you know what happens at the bottom. So a lesson for anyone aspiring to go up that corporate ladder in whatever field, you have to know what happens at the bottom. So going back many decades into where that started off, I have seen that profession of finance and accounting shift significantly. And from the days of manual ledgers and hand posting of entries to today, having automation and machine learning and robotic environment take over to do some of that mundane task. In fact, it was that first role that led me into the path of taking up my CIMA qualification. I wanted to be a management accountant because it's a management accountant that drives things in organizations. And I always tell young accountants, if an organization doesn't exist, there will not be the need for you to do the historical financials of it. So the first thing is you have to keep the organization going. And therefore, it drove me down this path of management accounting, which was a way in which I could actually influence the outcomes of an organization. So even when I was a mundane accountant posting entries and stuff like that, most of my time I used to spend around walking in the factory of Unilever, learning what was happening there, to understand how processes and resources were converted into value. It's a boring thing to look at paper invoices or paper transactions, but not know how that resource came into the organization, how it was processed, how it was sold, and how that transferred into value. So those basic things are what took me up the management path. And therefore, it led to bigger and better things. So following my stint at Unilever, I went over to the Middle East to join largest American corporation in offshore oil and gas. I went into their manufacturing yard in the role of an asset accountant. And then from there, I took off to becoming a project accountant responsible for projects of hundreds of millions of dollars across the world. So that's where it took me. And to get back to your question, how have things changed in the profession? Things have changed significantly. And today, in my role as a trainer and a coach and a mentor, like you mentioned, I do training for the CAs and CPAs and all of that. I tell young accountants how the finance profession is changing. I work with organizations, finance teams, to tell them what transformation is happening in finance. Yeah. So today, finance has to play a much more involved role in strategy and performance management and looking at adding value to the business rather than just being a scorekeeper. Okay?
Yeah.
So that's where that part of my profession has changed. My profession today, training and development, running programs, speaking at events and stuff like that. And over the 20 years, I have seen an exponential rise in that space. Now, just like the basics of accounting, I got into the basics of doing that, talking and presenting. By the way, I must tell you, Angela, something else. I had this talkative streak in me even as a toddler. I would stand up and be the center of attention at a party. As I became a little older, I used to be the auctioneer. So I always had that streak in me. And therefore, the ability to stand up and say things was something inherent in me, right? So going back to the profession of training and coaching, it used to be, as you would well realize, face to face. And you had to be in a location, which is what took me across the world to all those 35 different countries, every continent that I have been doing this. But how has that changed today? When you're talking about change in a profession, one has to look at a change in the business models that drive those professions. So the business model behind how finance is delivered is changed today. Similarly, the business model of what I am doing as a coach and a mentor and a trainer has also changed. So today I don't need to be face to face. I can reach audiences across the globe. And regularly I do presentations to audiences in the US and the UK and Africa and the Middle East and all of that from my office here. And today, of course, technology has helped. I don't think many people thank anyone for what's happening now in the context of COVID, but it has also changed. It has forced a significant change on the way organizations have to adapt and adopt new technologies and change the way they're doing things. So every profession is changing. And if we don't see that, and if you don't see that, then it's a significant disadvantage and you're behind the 8 ball.
Wow, that was very insightful. The next question. So I guess you're in this overarching industry of accounting and finance. What do you think is the most important skill and attitude in this profession?
Well, it'll be quite easy for me to say that one has to know one's technical basics of double entry bookkeeping and IFRSs and costing and, things like that. But today, it's much more than that. Like I mentioned in my earlier segment with you, I said that today, a lot of what was done in that manner has shifted to being taken over by technology, artificial intelligence, machine learning, robotics, augmented reality. They are all aspects that are taking over what was done. And therefore, just as I discussed how professions are changing, one has to also recognize the skills and competencies that are required to accompany that shift in the profession. And therefore, what was once seemingly back office role that professional accountants would play, today accountants have to be in the thick of things. And one of the very interesting programs I do when I'm mentoring or coaching or whatever, I talk of finance turning into business partners. That is partnering with the other side of the business, not from one's ivory tower in an accounting department, but walking the floor, talking to a salesperson, talking to a production person, inquiring as to what a machine is doing, etc. And therefore, one's knowledge has to be more than just the technicalities of accounting, bookkeeping, IFRSs, audits, and things like that. And today, the key skills and competencies, I would say, are in the areas of critical thinking, of being able to use data and analytics to deliver value. And most importantly, I would think the soft skills, because those two can somehow be identified as technical skills.
Oh, yeah.
But the soft skills required in that changing profession would be things like communication skills and empathy. Because as finance professionals, we have to be good storytellers. We have to be able to paint a picture. And therefore, how do you communicate in a manner that not only holds the attention of the audience, but also communicates what I have in my mind and what I want to influence someone? And therefore, what is communication? The ability to stand up and talk, the ability to bring a set of data and numbers to tell that story, the ability to work with visualizations to tell something which is very boring, which what accountants do, in a manner that will be enlightening and encouraging to someone else to look at. And most of all, then, the empathy, putting yourself in someone else's shoes, and then understanding, I know why that manager had to overrun his budget, because he had this situation. Not because he just wanted to overrun a budget. So those skills become important. So you see, there is a shift in the mix of competencies and skills that are required. And I would say, Angela, it's not only in the finance profession. Today, in any management context, we need to be people who listen first and then talk, right? On that note, I'm talking too much, I realize.
Okay, so what do you wish you'd know when you were starting out?
One always wishes one knew more. You said I was the president of the Chartered Institute of Management Accountants, CIMA.
Yep.
I have met hundreds and thousands, perhaps, of young CIMA graduates. Over the years that I was on the board of CIMA, which is about 12 years before I became president, so all that time when I was on the council, a board member, I would see the profession changing. I would see the evolution of the new syllabus, the new areas in which we are trying to train the next generation of accountants. I used to attend their graduations as a president, and I used to tell the new graduates, look here, guys, I feel very envious of you because you are learning things that I wish I could have known when I started out on my accounting career. However, having said that, it was a different time and a place and an age. And therefore, one should not look back and say, okay, what would I do if I knew more of what was happening? You always are in a situation where you are in a particular time frame, at a particular point in time, and therefore you have to make the best use of it. The challenge for me is not so much knowing what I wish I knew, but actually realize if I had made the best use of what I had known at that time, which is a very different thing. Have I made the best use of what I had known at that time?
Wow.
And when I was CIMA president, I had a theme for my year. And my theme that year was one word, and the word was relevance. And if you think of it, Angela, the word relevance never gets outdated because you are relevant all the time. So if I'm relevant today with what I know today, and when today becomes tomorrow, I have to be relevant in the context of what is then. And if everyone were to take that concept, you will always be pushing the barriers of where you want to be. That is my challenge to every young person.
Wow, that was good. That was really good. So this question, you're self-running your own business at the moment, but you are also in the management roles as well previously. What do you wish you'd known before taking your management roles?
Management is also an experience that you build with every first step. Just like I referred to in my last question with you, it's very difficult to think what you wish you had known before you took the next role of management. And I tell every young person I mentor, think of the immediate future, the midterm future, and the long-term future, right?
Yeah.
And therefore, you know when you might walk into a management role. I became a manager at a very young age. I was in my early 20s when I had to manage. Now, again, one can look at management in two contexts. You can manage a process, you can manage people, you can manage outcomes. So what are we talking about? Today, many people would be managing things, but not having people to manage. There'll be people who are managing people who are in turn managing processes. You are not directly managing a process or an outcome. So therefore, management takes various shapes and forms. And depending on the context of management, you begin to go with the flow, right? And therefore, when I look back and think of it, I don't think I miss out on anything that I should have known. Because I'm a person who tackles things as it comes. I mean, I spent a stint in the Air Force as well in Sri Lanka. You are put in situations where you don't know what is ahead of you. And therefore, that will always be a situation where the only thing that I would think you should be knowing is knowing how to resolve a situation and how to respond to something that suddenly comes up.
What did you do in the Air Force?
I was an officer in the Air Force. I always wanted to be in a force from the time I was a young kid. I was an officer in the regiment squadron. So the Air Force also has several parts to it. You know, you always think of an Air Force as pilots and, people like that. But then behind that, the pilots are only the tip of the iceberg. There are other areas like the logistics, like the regiment squadron, the engineers and all of that. So I was in that role. Yeah. Very interesting. You still do all the training. I mean, I was quite a good marksman and all that at that
Wow. So if you didn't choose the field you're in now, where would you be? Do you think you'll be in that Air Force or engineering?
I would have been an engineer. But having said that, I always tell people, you see, I missed out on a career to become an engineer. But in a way, I went down the right path. And I tell people now I do financial engineering and management engineering and process engineering by changing processes, right? As you migrate up various levels in organizations, you find that various disciplines somehow do similar things, right? You're all doing things for the betterment of the organization. You're looking at outcomes and things like that to reach out to achieve something.
Next question. What makes you feel alive?
Ooh, everything around me. The whole world around me. You, Angela, you make me feel alive.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah, you're such an active person.
Okay.
You're such an aspirational person. And I like that.
Okay.
So it's people like you that make me feel alive. Right? When I look at the world around me, I mean, when everything is so despondent and people are with their heads down, think of everything that's around you that you can make better, right? It may be the worst situation, but you can still make something out of it. And when you do that, under those circumstances, you feel much more satisfied, a significant sense of achievement.
Do you have a motto that you live by?
A motto? Well, my motto is be alive.
Is it like live your day to the fullest? Is that something
like that? So you being alive means you're aware of things.
Oh.
You understand things around you, right? We are not an inanimate object like this, right? But even today, this sometimes reacts. I mean, technology. So imagine a human being. So be alive. In the 2 words, be alive. There's several things in that. What do you do to be alive?
Do you have any books that you would recommend?
I have thousands of books around me, and my son has taken to the same liking, and he has thousands of books as well. I mean, he's in London, but I still have his books that he's left here.
Yeah.
And when you talk of books, I had interesting connections with books. You know, having been through hundreds of airports, perhaps across the world, the one place I go to is always the bookstores, right? So even when I'm in a lounge, airline lounge, the first thing I look for are the magazines, right? The latest magazines, because I want to read. When I'm on a 20-hour flight, perhaps, I don't watch movies so much. I read magazines because that gives me so much more pleasure. And believe it or not, I can come up with an entire training course by reading a single article. And I still remember one of the books I bought way back in 2006 or 7. And it was titled Competing on Analytics, a book by 2 authors, Davenport and Harris. And that's what got me interested into the whole space of big data, analytics, and so on, right? Just that one book. And I still remember when you do an MBA, the lecturers tell you to buy a whole lot of books. One of my MBA lecturers once said, you're never going to have time to read all those books cover to cover. But he says there's one thing you take away. Sometimes all you take is looking at the back and the front of the book and reading the little short synopsis of the book. And then picking out the important ideas from them. So if you look at my reading of books in that context, I would have read thousands of books, right? That's where I come from. I mean, it's the learning, and today it can be ebooks as well.
Yeah.
Right? You can listen to books, audio books.
Yeah.
So what sort of books are we talking about? And today you can do multiple things, right? So when you're driving around, you can have a book playing in the background. Right? Yeah. So it's a question of what you want out of that.
That was a great answer as well. So do you have a mentor yourself? If so, how have they influenced you?
Everyone has a mentor at some point in time. People don't see their mentors. Your parents would be your mentors. My dad was my mentor, right? Then when you start working, you identify a particular boss or a colleague, perhaps. A mentor need not always be your senior.
Yeah.
You can have a mentor who is parallel to you. And today, you want someone like that. And I have mentored some CEOs as well. CEOs may have mentors who are younger people than them, right? Because they want to understand what's happening in that next generation. So you want a whole group of mentors from whom you learn various things. Most parents would say that they learn things from their kids. For example, how to use a remote control or how to make best use of all the features of their mobile phone. So there's no harm in someone being your techo mentor, your tech guru, or your management mentor, or your religious mentor, if one is that way inclined, right? Spiritual things, right? And today, mentoring takes the form of not only progressing up a career path or the corporate ladder, but mentoring you even in lifestyles. So there are lifestyle coaches, right? Lifestyle coaches who would teach you how to get the best out of your life, right? Work-life balance, that is very important, right? So therefore, yes, I have had various mentors. And, I had a mentor at Sydney Water Corporation when I worked. My general manager, he was also like me. He would travel around and bring a book and say, Aubrey, I picked up this book at the airport bookshop, right? And he and I would exchange ideas. And a lot of what I achieved in Sydney Water, like changing the way management was done and getting rid of budgets and introducing things like rolling forecasts and dynamic budgeting, and etc., was because he supported me.
Mm-hmm.
So a mentor is someone who guides and supports you and gives you an opportunity to grow as well. So it all depends on what type of mentor you're looking for.
Then what about mentees? What was that experience like, having a lot of mentees yourself?
Oh, yeah. I mean, that's a very enjoyable experience. I've had mentees across the world. I could boast of mentees in almost, every country that I have been. Because when I do a program, right, a workshop and a coaching session or whatever, the next day I get emails or LinkedIn messages. Could he be my mentor? The experience and exposure it is given to me is this. They come from different cultural backgrounds as well. And there's a certain way to mentor different people, right? So even right now, I have a number of mentees from different cultural backgrounds. I'm mentoring a young lass in the Philippines, right? And she's a very, very smart girl whom I have been mentoring for, 8-10 years now. And I have seen her grow in her corporate career. And you see the satisfaction to me. I set myself a KPI, and I tell them this as well. If I am to mentor you, and you're on a scale of 1 to 10 on whatever level of achievement you want to achieve, I want to see you move up that path. And therefore, I almost make them realize that they have to, right? Because a mentor can only do so much. The rest of it is in you.
Yeah.
And you must be willing to take those first steps. I get immense satisfaction out of being a mentor because I put myself in their shoes, right? I empathize with them. And I sort of imagine, okay, where I would want to take myself if I were them.
How do you show your mentees that you believe in them?
You have to give them an understanding that you can see them changing, right? And I have a particular mentor whom, again, I have mentored, it's coming up to over 10 years now, who started off as a young graduate in one of the big universities doing a Master of Accounting, come from China. And then I influenced her to get into doing CIMA. And today she's the associate director at one of the big four. So that is a sense of satisfaction. But the key to it was during that path, and still even today, giving her my honest opinion about herself and the feeling, the belief in herself, and showing that I trust what she's doing next. Yes, she may have made some inappropriate decisions at some point, but then when they correct themselves, you show the appreciation for it. You sort of, again, that is some form of empathy. There are ways in which you can tell someone how to achieve something. And you can also pull back the reins when they're not achieving something. So the key thing is to give them hope and to show them where they are succeeding. That, I think, is the most engaging way of showing your trust in them and then getting them to do something more, right? So you tell them, right, I'm now taking you to this level because I trust that you will do a good job at it.
Second last question. So what advice would you give?
Second last question. Oh my gosh. Have you done so many?
Yeah. Well, what advice would you give to your younger self?
Be yourself, Aubrey. Be yourself. Don't fake things that you cannot be. But having said that, I also believe that one can train and mold oneself. But then again, it is being oneself. And that's what I have done. I have never tried to be someone else, someone that I am not.
Okay, then if you could describe yourself with an animal, what would it be?
Oh, lion.
Lion?
A lion. Leo.
Yeah.
Yes, I'm a Leo. So I'm a lion. And I seem to have all the characteristics of a lion.
Okay, that was
Can you see my mane?
Yeah, that was a very concise answer. Okay, well, that's it for today. Thank you so much. Honestly, thank you.
You're very welcome, Angela. And may I wish you all the best in your endeavors. And I hope we can all jointly make this a success.
Mm.
And I think you are the right person to lead this.
Oh my God. Oh, this is getting like really sweet.
You asked me, how do I show my trust in my mentee? And there I am.
Oh, okay. Thank you.